From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
From old to new.
It's a very old building, but it has a lot of potential. It's a very well-built building.
A project to rehab this old jail in Tennessee. Multiple factors are weighing on milk production at mid-year, and an attack at a port in Ukraine. Will it derail a freshly inked agreement to resume exports from the Black Sea? It's next on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. A Russian attack in the port city of Odesa over the weekend threatens to derail a new shipping agreement. The attack happening just hours after officials from Ukraine, Russia, the United Nations, and Turkey agreed to allow grain shipments to resume. Ukrainian President Zelensky saying the Russian missile attack on Odesa is a blow to Russia's political positions. The U.S. and EU are condemning Russia for the attack. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said it casts serious doubt on Russia's commitment to the grain deal. Now, Michelle Rook joins us with the very latest.
Clinton, Ukrainian farmers have been watching the talks to allow resumption of grain exports for weeks with great hope because it's their only lifeline to be able to plant a new crop this fall. However, farmers as well as U.S. market experts also told me there were many challenges involved with implementation of the deal, and that was before Russia bombed the port of Odesa. Even before the ink was dry on the deal to allow resumption of Ukrainian grain exports, skepticism ran high.
Do we trust Putin? Do we trust that Russia is going to allow for all of this to happen? I don't really know. So I'm kind of skeptical of the whole thing.
After the signing ceremony, I talked to one Ukrainian farmer who told me he was hopeful the deal would help move the 18 million tons of grain farmers had left from last season. However, he was also trying to be realistic about whether or not Russia would uphold their end of the deal.
Unfortunately, I'm not optimistic about it because many times we saw that words of Russia mean nothing.
Even so, he says Ukrainian officials told them grain exports would resume within days, and they desperately need these sales.
We see that when the channel is open for export, the price will go up, and we'll be able also the farmers can get some money so they can start a new planting season for winter crops for next season, 2023.
But without quick release of the grain, especially small farmers will plant little, if any, new crops.
Small farmers, they have less access to working capital. They have less access to financing. So many of them, unfortunately, might go out of business.
He says he can no longer use credit, but instead has to prepay for 100% of his fertilizer and herbicide needs. And even then, the prices have doubled, making it nearly cost prohibitive. Unfortunately, the deal may be too little too late for some operations that have already been forced to declare bankruptcy. And if the deal doesn't work, many more will follow suit.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Back at home, exports from a major West Coast port are stuck as protesters shut down the port of Oakland over new trucking regulations. As we reported last week, a new California law that requires some industries to classify contractors as regular benefited employees as many independent truck operators saying it's hurting their business. Drivers started blocking road access to the port last week. However, operations were able to resume late Monday. Port officials say it will take at least 3 days to clear the backlog of containers. Now, the Port of Oakland is an important link in California's $20 billion plus ag export industry. It's also the largest export outlet for U.S. red meat to major markets in Asia.
If you look at the overall impact on the ag commodity groups, everything from fruit and produce to meat and everything in between, and all the associated industries that go with that, the economic impact of this situation in Oakland going on for any length of time is just monumental. So all the more reason that we need to push the state of California and the appropriate parties to get this resolved as soon as possible.
The USMEF says continued congestion and unreliability at West Coast ports has already prompted a shift from chilled to more frozen product, which has a longer shelf life but doesn't carry the premium value of chilled meat. Now, if the Oakland shutdown continues, it could accelerate this trend. USDA releasing some big reports, including the biannual cattle inventory numbers looking at herd size, plus the monthly cattle on feed report. The on-feed number came in at 100.4% and marketings were at 102%, both in line with expectations. Placements, they were above estimates at 97.6% of a year ago. Now, the cattle inventory report continued to confirm contraction of the herd due to high feed costs and drought, with 98.8 million head of cattle and calves as of July 1st. That was down 2% from last year. The calf crop was also down 1%. All cows and heifers were down 2% from 2021, while beef cows, they were down 2.4% at 30.4 million head. But the most telling number may be the replacement heifers, down 2.5%, showing more are now being placed in feedlots.
It's just still showing we are still in that liquidation mode, and the heifers are not being retained to go back to the cow herd. And that's what really stemmed the rally of 2014.
Now, he thinks the tighter herd numbers will really start to show up by this fall. USDA releasing its latest crop progress numbers on Monday as crops continue to deal with heat across major portions of the country. Corn conditions continue to fall, now with 61% of the crop rated good to excellent. That's down 3 percentage points from last week. In Indiana, just 46% is rated that good. On soybeans, 59% of the crop rated good to excellent. That's down 2 points week over week, while 75% of Iowa rated good to excellent right now. It's 3 points lower than a week ago. And spring wheat in our top 6 states now rated 68% good to excellent. That's down 3 points from a week ago. Montana sitting at 43% good to excellent. Parts of the country getting some much needed rain over the weekend. Meteorologist Matt Yurosavik joins us with the latest on where it could hit next.
Yeah, Clinton, still dealing with that warmth, that humidity across the middle of the country. A little bit of a break from that in parts of the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes, at least from the humidity. The heat will come back, though, as this pattern's not going to change all that much as we head towards the end of the week. So that's really something that we're going to keep an eye on here. Still a big ridge out in the west, hot and dry out in the southwest with some afternoon thunderstorms pretty much every single day as we head through the rest of this week. And then the south and east going to be very warm and humid. Up in the northern tier, though, dealing with a little bit of a break from that heat. And take a look at the rain over the next 10 days, more of it back in the Four Corners region, even through parts of the Corn Belt and through parts of the Mid-South, getting a lot of rain with a couple of systems as we head towards the end of this week, and we'll continue to track that right here on Ag Day. And take a look at this video from Michelle Claflin. She said this dryland cornfield in southwest Missouri got in late due to the wet spring, but things looked great until the heat and drought set in. The ear on the right didn't have a single kernel pollinate. Last week, Missouri's governor declared a drought alert for 53 mostly central and southern counties. 75% of the state is in a drought, a third of the state in extreme drought conditions. Claflin said this crop will be chopped for feed since pasture and hay conditions are in such bad shape. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
Markets rebounding to start the week. We'll dig into the fundamentals coming up next in analysis. And later, creating a community center in Tennessee by repurposing an old jail. See how Extension is working to lead the project forward in the country.
Ag Day is brought to you by the End Zone by Farm Shop MFG, which allows you to rehydrate your soybeans from 10 to 13%. On a 20,000 bushel bin, that's an extra semi-load added to your bottom line. Order your End Zone fan control by July 31st and receive $200 off.
Wheat markets fought hard to stay in the green following that uncertainty around shipping grain out of Ukraine. Here's Michelle Rook once again with a look at Monday's markets.
Joining us to talk about that grain performance today, Brian Grady with Pro Farmer. Well, a recovery in the grains. It looked like we were trying to put some war and weather premium back into these markets.
Yeah, I think as we kicked off the Sunday overnight session, it was Ukraine and the bombing at that port of Odesa that really got the markets going. But from there, I think weather took over, and that's why we saw soybeans and corn outperform the wheat market into the closes. We had high-range closes in those other two markets, and wheat struggled to get even a mid-range to low-range close there. So that tells me that probably the Ukraine port situation is a wait-and-see type of situation, whereas the weather, we know that it's probably going to return to be hot and dry as we move into the late part of this month and early August. And so when that ridging happens again, that's a pretty critical time frame for corn fill and soybean pod setting and filling.
We did do technical damage last week to both wheat and corn, so how much recovery do you think we're likely to even be able to get?
Well, I think that Monday's price action was, it got us back into those short-term consolidation ranges, let's say, from the downside breakouts that were posted last Friday. So that's kind of a big deal for bulls. If we get follow through the rest of the week, then I think it's a bigger deal, obviously. But it's kind of a wait and see type of situation. Bears still have the upper hand from a technical perspective.
Right, and weather will be part of that, but the other big key for recovery is going to be what we see with this Fed meeting on Wednesday, right?
Right, and the Fed's going to raise interest rates again. There's no doubt about that. It's a question of whether it's 75 basis points, which is what the thought has been all the way up until last week, and then we heard the talk of maybe 100 points. So we'll see what happens there. But if they go with the 75, then the expectation immediately is that we'll see another increase at the next rate meeting. If they go with 100 points, then maybe they pause a little bit and see where things kind of shake out. But all in all, we're going to see rates increasing through the end of this year, I think, and then early 2023. That becomes the critical time frame in terms of whether the Fed has to decide, did we go too far or do we have to kind of pump the brakes or what the case.
We'll keep an eye on that. Thanks so much, Brian Grady with Pro Farmer. More AgDay coming up.
AgDay is brought to you by MetLife Investment Management's Agricultural Finance Group. MetLife Investment Management is positioned to help you grow your business with a competitive farm, ranch, and agribusiness loan. To learn more, visit investments.metlife.com/agriculture.
100-degree temperatures are making it hard for firefighters in California to battle a wildfire in Mariposa County. The Oak Fire has already scorched more than 15,000 acres and burned multiple structures. Thousands are now being evacuated as crews battle the blaze. The governor has declared a state of emergency for the county just north of Fresno. And meteorologist Matt Yurosavik joining us here for our national forecast. It's going to be hot out there in the western half of the country, but also through the south.
Oh yeah, hot and dry in the west. We've got temperatures approaching 100 degrees. Still going to be hot and humid in much of the south, but the north getting a little bit of a break from the heat and humidity as we head through the middle of this week. And you can see some temperatures on our map here. A little bit cooler than average up in northern Great Lakes, parts of the upper Midwest. Temperatures in the low 80s, even some upper 70s. Still hot though, right across the center of the country. Temperatures still topping out at or just above that 100-degree mark in Amarillo down to Dallas and Tulsa, even towards southern parts of Texas as well. Hot and dry in the west, but hot and humid really from Texas on to the east, right through much of the Gulf Coast, dealing with a heat index or what it's going to feel like closer to 105 or 110 degrees. Tomorrow, though, it'll be still a little bit cooler. Some refreshing air coming into parts of the Dakotas and the upper Midwest. Still mild, though, very muggy down in the south. And tomorrow afternoon, again, we're going to see the heat in the south, a little bit of reprieve from that heat up in the northern tier, and that continues as we head through the middle part of this week. Zooming in here on the southwest, still hot. Phoenix up into Yuma, and then Flagstaff. Look at this. Some rain expected there, keeping temperatures down just a little bit, but still in the triple digits from Fresno to Bakersfield there in California. And if we add in some of that humidity off in the east, temperatures feeling like 103 in Dallas, 97 in New Orleans, 110 there in Memphis, and 98 in Jacksonville. Very hot and humid through the Gulf Coast, and this is all because of this jet stream. It keeps the ridge back in the west, allowing some cooler air to come in to the north, but still allowing all that heat and humidity to settle down in the south and east, and it's going to stay that way. This is through the weekend and into next week. Notice the cooler air retreats a little bit, but the ridge stays strong in the west heading through next week, and along with that ridge, stays high pressure, but some systems moving through the mid-Atlantic states, parts of the mid-South, going to be dealing with more of that rainfall and then some isolated or scattered showers and thunderstorms, some of which could be on the heavier side there in parts of the Four Corners region pretty much every afternoon and evening as things start to heat up. And that's really going to start adding up some of that rain in places that really need it. Right through the middle part of the country as well, parts of the Ohio Valley and Middle Tennessee dealing with some heavier rain there, and that will slide off the East Coast as we head towards the end of the week, and we'll continue to track that right here on Ag Day. That's a look around the country. Now let's take a look at the weather where you live. Somerset, Kentucky, heavy rain and thunderstorms likely, a high near 84 degrees. 75 degrees in Gary, Minnesota with showers likely, and then heading back to Flagstaff, Arizona, a high near 75 degrees with heavy rain and thunderstorms likely.
A multitude of factors are weighing on milk production. We'll have the latest reports from USDA. And later, refurbishing an old jail to create a new community space in Tennessee. Today in the country. U.S. milk production is on pace to end the year slightly below a year ago. The April to June production report from USDA shows milk down for the quarter. U.S. farmers pumped 57.9 billion pounds, 0.5% lower than the same quarter a year ago. The drop partly due to fewer milk cows, 87,000 head fewer than last year. The amount of milk per cow is also growing at a slower rate due to higher feed costs, continued drought in the West, and heat stress. Now, the industry has still managed to increase milk per cow in the 4 of the first 6 months of 2022. Meanwhile, the latest cold storage report shows at the end of June, total cheese stocks and warehouses were down from the previous month, but still 5% higher than a year ago.
That's the highest June total cheese storage report that we've ever seen. But it is a little bit lower than last month. The other side of that spectrum is all the cheese categories except for Swiss showed an increase of 5% over a year ago. Swiss cheese was up 9%. So we're still gaining on a year-over-year basis. Still a little bit the needle pointing toward the bearish side, but at least a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel.
Butter stocks were up 3% from last month, but are 20% lower than the same month last year. Up next, new life from an old building. How this jail in Tennessee is being repurposed into a place of wellness and community. Next in the country.
Registration is open for the 2022 Pro Farmer Crop Tour. Join our team as we gain insight on the 2022 growing season in person or online. Visit profarmercroptour.com/register to select the stop nearest you.
Rural Tennessee County has plans and now some of the money to convert an old jail into a new community food and fitness center. UT Extension in Houston County is working to develop the project, and Charles Denny has more on the plans to use the refurbished space to improve health.
An old place, a 50s style rancher that's about to have a new image and purpose. This used to be the Houston County Jail as recently as 2 decades ago, a house with a couple of cells inside, the bars still upright. But soon, about 18 months worth of construction will start.
It is going to be a challenge. It's a very old building, but it has a lot of potential. It's a very well-built building, and I think Miss Annette said that it has good bones.
These are the keys to the jail.
Miss Annette is Annette Cole, Family and Consumer Sciences Agent with UT Extension here. She's led the effort to renovate the old jail, to create new space for extension programming, the refurbished building ready to serve this community in a much different way. But first, a little of the fascinating history here.
It was the sheriff's home. He and his wife lived there, and they added the jail and attached it to the back of the house. His wife cooked all the meals.
The center will be partially funded by a nearly $500,000 grant from the Tennessee Department of Health. In the future, we'll see exercise, gardening, cooking, and food preservation classes taught here by UT Extension.
The community has a high obesity and diabetes rate with limited areas where people can exercise, just a few walking trails. But the old jail, when the work is done, could mean a healthier Houston County. The new place will be called the Community Connection Food and Fitness Center.
Our thoughts are that if we change the way they cook, the way they eat, the way they exercise, that it will have an impact on the chronic conditions that are here.
People are excited for this project, space needed for lifestyle changes and better health, and a way to turn something old into something useful. This is Charles Denny reporting.
All right, thanks, Charles. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day. Have fun.